Live here in GolfTec Studio G. You excited to be here?
I am, yeah.
Why aren't you talking louder then?
I'm trying.
All right, here you
All
got
right,
this.
let's do it.
All right, so today we're going to check out some swings. We'll break down some common faults, talk about simple ways to fix these faults, unless you want to talk about something else. And first up, we have Graham. So while we're talking about Graham's swing, we've got a few things you can do. So if you'd like to submit a swing, go ahead and do that. That one you can film inside the GolfTec app and then submit that at YouTube at golftec.com. And then if you're watching this right now live, then you can submit questions inside the YouTube chat. And someone over there, new Brad or Kevin or Lauren, will probably yell at me and tell me that you have a question, and we'll talk it through.
Yeah, feel free to ask as many questions as you like.
Great advice. You're doing awesome so far. Okay, so let's take a look at Graham. So first, we didn't get any info on where Graham hits these shots, so that's obviously the missing piece. If you're going to submit a swing, go ahead and tell us a few things about what you'd like to do differently. I have a pretty good handle on probably where Graham hits these shots, so let's talk this one through. So first, he has most of the swing looks really nice. So checking out the left-hand picture on the backswing, when his hands are about even with his belt buckle here, they're pretty close to touching him. His lead arm is in some amount. Shaft looks pretty good. As we get to where his lead arm is parallel to the ground, not much to talk about there. Shaft's passing through about the middle of his bicep. His lead arm is behind him. His knee flex is starting to change. Looks really nice. I would say that we do have one thing you could practice a little bit more, Graham. That's the top of your swing. There's some longer swings that you can make with some extension. Remind me, we should talk about that, how to help him make this a little bit longer. In checking out like Dustin Johnson's swing, I don't think you need to have the butt end of the club or the grip end as high as Dustin does here, looking at where he's got the grip end of the club. The height of it isn't necessarily what I would describe, but how far it's traveled relative to where it started, that could go a little further. Okay, downswing. This is where Graham could use a little bit more understanding. His lead arm parallel to the ground, face looks nice, the path looks good, this is a nice swing. Now as he gets closer to where the shaft is parallel to the ground, his right leg is a little bit straight relative to what I'll show you here out of Dustin Johnson. And Dustin isn't necessarily the model for doing anything, but for Graham this would be a good example. So a couple things you can see in there. The flex of Graham's right arm, his trail arm, is straighter, and his knee flex is more extended, and his shoulders and his pelvis, neither one of those are as turned as much. So on the downswing, Graham has a lot of really nice parts of his swing, but he stops turning, stops side bending, and starts to straighten his legs, and that's where his right arm gets straighter. Where that becomes a bigger problem is down here at the very bottom of the swing. Just as he hits this ball, try to get this as close to impact as I can. And the same thing for Dustin. So when Dustin hits this ball, you can see more flex in his trail arm. That's like the most important part. His lead leg isn't quite as straight as Graham's, and when you look really closely down here at the bottom, you can see how Graham has so much of his weight pushed into his heel, not really even target side, just straight back into his heel. So there's a shoulder tilt component of Graham's swing that he's lacking, that has his right arm too straight, and all of that is really getting into how fast the club face closes. And I would suspect, if Graham's watching this, most of his bad shots aren't really bad, but he does hit a lot of pulls, maybe pull draws. I don't know about his driver, but I'd suspect the same type of thing, and maybe some heel hits from how straight his arm is.
Sounds good.
Sounds good?
Yeah,
okay.
Sounds about right, yeah.
Now, another way that you can look at this, and with a touch more certainty, he doesn't quite have the hip sway needed to give himself the side bend. So as his hands appear above his shoulder, we'll do the same thing for Dustin Johnson. And in here, you can recognize a big difference in the amount of side bend from both his hips and his shoulders relative to Dustin in there. And that's generally from the front view, that he doesn't have enough hip sway towards the target, so his impact position is a little tilted to the right, but not enough. His lead leg is too straight, his right leg is too straight, and the way I would hit this ball at impact is to have my lead knee slightly ahead, close to an inch further toward the target than where the center of your ankle would be. That'd be a good way to measure that from the front. We don't have the front view swing, but it shows up right here that's the problem. At impact, that was lacking to make these pictures much less tilted to the right. Think we can show them how to do this a little better?
Oh yeah, for
okay.
sure.
All right, so let's go over here. Kevin, you quick on the draw? Oh, nice. Okay. So from the front view, just demonstrate Graham's impact position. So less hip sway. His lead knee would look like yours, and he's got a ton of his weight pushing back into his heel. And none of this is wrong, but having your right arm as straight as Graham does at impact, that is a little tougher one to overcome, because as your arm is straightening, you're also starting to close the face more. If you want to have the face the most open to the target that you could, just keep bending your arm more and more and more and more and more, and that's making it easier to open the face to the target. It slows down the rate that the face is closing relative to your swing direction. So lead knee in front of your ankle, right about, put it right over my finger here. That would be a good place to recognize how far you want to pull your hips towards the target to give yourself that relationship of knee to ankle. So you could start just by hitting little chip shots that way, posing up against push against your couch at night or something while you're watching TV or whatever you're doing, watching YouTube videos or what's going to happen next with the Live Golf Tour. That's a good way to spend your time, and you can just rehearse that feel. But I think most people just don't know that your knee should be that far in front of your ankle for most people on a standard shot. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to get started on this.
All right, what else you got for Graham then? How would you move from just moving around like that into trying to hit a ball?
I guess the more you rehearse this, you're going to get more feels of the swaying towards the target with your hips.
Okay.
And then that right arm definitely bending a lot more. You're going to feel like your right shoulder is a lot lower through impact. And then take this onto the driving range and hit a few chips out there, and you should start seeing big difference.
That's pretty good. Okay, let's go on to the next one. So I've got, actually this would be a good one, even though it's a driver. I like this particular view. So now we have our friend Brandon. So Brandon hits behind every single golf ball with an iron. Every single one, never fails. He could probably put the ball here outside of his trail foot and still hit behind it. So we'll use him and then compare the downswing. Most of the problems that he has can be well described by how Brooks Koepka does a nice job with this same problem, even though it's a driver and the ball's in a different place. So check out Brandon here, and you feel free to talk about what you think of Brandon's swing, and maybe we can start right about here. We'll just start with the shaft parallel to the ground in the downswing. So there's the shaft, Brandon's humerus, forearm, shaft alignment, and trail arm.
Oh, let's try to get Brooks there as well.
Try, I'm going to do this.
All right.
Ready.
Perfect.
Got
You can
it.
see the big difference there between where the hand positions are, where Brooks has his hands right on top of his right thigh there, compared to what Brandon has right there. It's way outside his right leg.
Yeah, so I'll try to just draw a circle around that.
Yeah, so that's a very key component to striking the
Yeah.
ball consistently.
So his wrists have uncocked almost all the way where you would want that relationship at impact, but he's got another 3 feet this club head needs to travel before it hits the ground, so he's done that way too soon. And a lot of people do that. That's the biggest problem that people face with hitting the ball off the ground, is learning how to hinge their wrists and then unhinge them, and the coordination of that is challenging. It's not hard to learn, it's just a lot of it goes with understanding though.
It's just happening too early.
Yep. So if we go a little further with Brandon, the longest part of your stroke is typically when your lead arm and the shaft are in an alignment, like they are right about now. So I'll just delete all these lines. There's his forearm. Here's my best interpretation of the shaft, basically in a straight line from these points. That's the longest part of his stroke, so now he's either going to hit behind the ball or he's got to do something to help him alleviate that angle of descent being too far down. If we get to that same point in time with Brooks, so here's the shaft relative to his lead arm, you can notice that alignment's very different. His stroke is still lengthening out. It's not at its longest point yet. Going a little further, this is about where Brooks has his forearm and the shaft in a straight line. And we're going to pass that to the point now where when Brandon hits, there's the shaft, there's his arm, and you can start to see the relationship's a bit of a mess. So he extends his lead wrist, pulls his arms even further apart than Brooks does, and that's the only shot he's got at hitting the ground. But while looking at the video, you can see this is where he hit the turf right about there. So that's why he plays the ball so far back in his stance when he's hitting this anyway. It's his way of learning how to do it. So if you want to stop doing that, let's go over here and test Kevin's switch skills again. Ooh, that was good. Looked like you didn't miss the button at all that time. Solid hit. Okay, so one way you could do this would be to start with the grip end of the club, the butt end of the club right here. Push that to the middle of your lead thigh. This is where you want to have it when you hit the ball anyway.
Okay.
So that would be a good start. Now, what I would say for someone of Brandon's skill, he's really struggling with this. You could make a backswing where I'm going to hold the butt end of the club, just load the radial deviation, and I'm not letting the butt end of the club move away from the target at all. Then you're going to punch the ground, digging the leading edge in, and make a little longer follow through on this side. So barely moving the butt end of the club backward, punch the turf really hard, and then keep your arms really straight on this side of the ball. You could start with just little chip shots from there and then start smashing them, and you're off and running. But it's got to start something small because this part of the swing is happening really fast. This is a really hard thing to coordinate. You've got to learn how to push the butt end of the club toward the target longitudinally, faster, harder for a longer time, and that's not easy to do unless it's a short swing.
Oh, yeah.
Stop laughing at me. You thought that was funny?
Oh, yeah.
So there's one. You got anything else, or you want to show Brandon how you would actually hit that kind of little punch shot first?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's definitely where you can get started with. So, punching it out there.
Perfect.
And then as you get better at that, probably progress that into half swings, half back, and then a half follow through. So something like this. And then slowly, by doing that, we're going to build up your swing by doing this. So quarter back, punching the ground, half back, and then half through. You should start hitting better contact. You should be able to also move the ball more forward in your stance and ultimately play better golf.
That's a good one of moving the ball up. I forgot to mention that. That's why I'm glad you're here, so you can keep me
And
Keep me
keep
paying
you in
attention
line.
here. Okay. So then let's do a couple other ones. How about,
Okay.
you can come back over here.
Okay, cool.
So here, let's see. Let's use Dustin Johnson here from the side view. And we'll talk about our third swing submission over here too. So we've got our friend Kevin, who was just hitting in here a little bit ago, and Dustin Johnson. Kevin claims that he hits behind a lot of these shots and sometimes just hits these balls that go to the right. Did I get most of that right? Yeah, it sounds like he's shaking his head. You can't see him. So let's talk about this one. So on the backswing, it is appropriate and you should straighten your trail leg in the backswing. Somewhere between like what Dustin Johnson has done here and what Kevin has done. I would still try to have a good 10 degrees of flex or maybe even a touch more at this point in time here. And he might be at really close to zero, possibly hyperextended. Then the shaft is even a little bit lower than I would try to make it at this point. Doesn't mean you're going to do something wrong, but that is pretty noticeable for it's just something different or something to work on. You can see where Dustin has his shaft through the top of his shoulder here. When his lead arm's parallel to the ground. I would do it more in than that, and you can see how his stance line is aimed far more to the left. This camera view is aiming too far to the right relative to what we've shot here with Kevin, but those are different. Let's go up to the top of the swing. This is one surefire way to program your swing to aim to the right. So stopping at the top of the swing with the shaft as far to the right as Kevin has it, plus the face angle is extremely closed in here. He's got the potential to hit some big pushes to the right. Maybe they curve too much to the left, but that would be a good start. So his arms are going to be further apart. The angle that he has the shaft, he could be helped quite a bit just by learning how to twist the shaft a little bit more, his lead arm, turning that more degrees, some pronation in there. That would help teach him how to aim the shaft more to the left. I think we can demonstrate that really well.
Rotating that?
Yeah, the shoulder more.
Trail shoulder,
so
yeah.
turning your shoulder outward like this as opposed to inward at all
Oh, yeah.
is a big help for that. But I think most of this is going to come down from just twisting his forearm more. And you can see the stud player over here, Dustin Johnson, who's trying to hit all little pull fades anyway. How that shaft relative to his feet is aimed very straight, that line. So if I drew a line right down his stance line and a line for the shaft, those are aimed pretty much parallel to one another, or close enough. Meanwhile, you've got Kevin aiming his stance fairly straight with the shaft angle even more to the right than that. So at this point in time, his swing direction's aimed severely to the right. Doesn't mean you're always going to do that, but that's not necessarily the best way to have the top of the swing. Now here's where Connie's point of keeping her arms together is a good idea. Talk through that one, Connie.
All
What's
right.
different in those swings?
You can definitely see how much separation Kevin has in his his right elbow and his left elbow here compared to Dustin, which got really squeezed together, coming down.
Arms much closer together.
Oh yeah, very close.
The angle the club is approaching the ball, he hasn't quite hit it yet. It's really straight into the ball relative to his stance line. Meanwhile, Kevin, hitting behind all these, has the club moving in to out quite a bit, which we talked about at the top of the swing. We really had that programmed into his swing, and you can watch the turf right here. He's already smashed that into the ground. So he doesn't really have the hip and shoulder turns quite right either. He's done a better job than, say, Graham of the right elbow bend, and the sways are closer to the target, but he needs some help with the shaft at the top, closer together with the elbows, learning how to do the follow through so that the club as it appears isn't over the top of his lead shoulder, as opposed to how most players who hit the ball really straight do, which will be much lower than that, even from this view. Having your hands come out below your shoulder on this side, so not at your shoulder like Kevin's, pulling it down here. So there's a lot of work for Kevin to do to hit a ball off the ground. Most of his swing isn't really bad, but because he makes these more egregious errors, swinging too far into out, it's really hard for him to do this right.
Oh, he's definitely got the draw built in there.
He's got a lot of potential for pushing and drawing, for sure. But when you hit 6 inches behind every ball, that's not going to work either. Okay, so set up to this one. And then you can just hit this right down the range
All right.
on this particular shot. So show Kevin's top of the backswing,
I can
where
try.
he's got the shaft. I know, that's a tough one. Here's the shaft aimed more to the right than that.
Oh,
And
wow.
the face angle more closed, so you have to extend your right wrist even more.
Jeez.
Okay, so that's Kevin playing golf. That would be hard not to
Wow.
swing and hit
I
my
don't
left
know
foot,
how he
right?
does it.
I know, it's pretty amazing. Kevin, you're really unique. That's what we'll
Athlete,
say. And
beast.
pull your arms apart more. You're getting closer. You're very wobbly right now.
I
Kevin
have
looks
no
like he's not
power right
shaking
here.
at all. Yeah, you can
Jeez.
see this is how people play golf, is these odd positions relative to what Connie's used to. Then on the downswing, the
right.
shaft gets fairly vertical. Pull your elbows apart more.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, right. And then that's the start of the problem. So just show Kevin the top of the backswing.
Correct one, or?
No, do his wrong again. I know. Well, this is fun for me anyway. Close the face more. Now, the twisting of your arm. So you're going to turn it more this way. Squeeze your elbows together. Stop laughing at me. Thanks. That's great. Okay. You've almost stopped. Are you done?
Hey, what?
Okay.
I'm not wobbling now, so
Yeah,
that's
no,
good.
that's good. Yeah, just keep,
Hey, we
the
got
more
that.
that we keep twisting your forearm, you can see how the shaft angle starts to change. What was that? Did that hurt? Did
No,
you get
just-
hurt? You're
It's
just
like,
not used to
that
this
is,
either?
that is
Okay.
good position there.
So the amount that Kevin would twist his arm this way is the answer to help him with the shaft better at the top, along with having his elbows closer together.
All right.
So
Just like
Kevin at
that.
the top of his swing, taking away the motion of the swing, doesn't have his lead arm turned enough and his arms further apart.
Yeah, so that way, as opposed to this way.
Yeah, it's better than you were doing on that first impression. That first one was bad.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is way better. That's a nice job. Okay, so that would be a good start. And then learning how to hit a ball and still having your hips and shoulders turned 90 degrees on this side of it, be perfect. You're still laughing.
So something like that.
Yeah, that's great. That's really good. Let's wrap this up. I'm sure people are tired of seeing Kevin swing.
No, it
You mocking that one out anyway.
was pretty bad.
Well, that's all right. So that would be a good start for Kevin. I'd practice, honestly. If he came in for his first lesson, I'd probably just explain. Don't turn your hips as fast as you can. Do it a little slower. And we're going to practice just how you twist your arm and keep your elbows close enough. We'd chip some balls, and then we'd see how that progresses over a little bit of time. That's why you can't just do one golf lesson and expect to have this all fixed. Now, there's a whiteboard over here. I can't read any of that thing.
All right, so I'm
You do the
next.
rest. Yeah. Yeah, we got a
Oh, we got a
question?
question?
Oh, we do have one in there. Okay.
Steven Maltby, Steven says, would the left thumb be too much on the right side of the shaft at address, which sets it across the line at the top?
Not necessarily. I get what you're saying. So if you had your lead hand turned to the right severely, what that's really doing is presetting your club face to path relationship. And Kevin's is far too closed. I'll pull that up. And it's a good point. I wouldn't necessarily start with Kevin's grip on this, but the degree that his face angle is closed there definitely tells you that his hand is turned to the right quite a bit relative to where it would be if you wanted the face a little a little closer to matching the angle of your lead arm, but that's not necessarily wrong. It's really the right shoulder, it's the amount you turn your arm, those are the influencing factors in there.
Another question.
What else you got?
So if I'm new to golf,
Yep.
I'm trying to get better, and I'm recording my swing, what should I look for from a front view versus a side view?
Sure.
Were you new to golf?
You're new to golf, you're filming your swing from the front view and the side view, what should you look for?
Wow. How new are you? That depends.
Well, let's start with some questions and answers here. So I've got from the side view, here's Charlie Hoffman. I'm trying to grab people who are close on my list. I'd start with trying to aim your feet straight, like you notice he does here. Try to aim your knees straight. Recognize that your shoulders are straight. That none of those have to be straight, but if you're new, that would be really good. Most people set up with their knees, hips, and shoulders to open to the target. And then that's presetting your swing direction to the left. Doesn't mean that's what you're going to do, but it's not a good start. That's how most people play golf. Okay, then an easy way for people to watch or to get started would be just to track the path of your hands. So here's where Charlie's start. And when his lead arm is parallel to the ground, you can notice that they actually pass through right about in the middle of his arm. So he's got his hands out here, and you might notice that that then cuts through the bottom of my, or the middle of my trail arm, so that you have enough of a dimension of inwardness of your swing. That would be a good start. And then when you get to the top of the swing, that you have the grip end of the club a couple of inches to the left of your trail shoulder, maybe aiming the shaft fairly straight relative to your feet, so kind of at your target.
You can
Those
also
would be
point
really
out
good.
some knee flex changes there as well.
It's a lot to talk about for
Yeah.
sure. So a professional coach has like a list of 1,000 things to talk about. I'd probably start with just track your hand path relative to you and see how you do on those. Because if those are okay, then typically you've changed your knee flex, you've done the side tilting, you're extending backward a little bit more. Going down even a little further than that, when your lead arm is parallel to the ground on the downswing, having your shaft here, the very grip end of the club, and your hands pass through the middle of your arm again. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be a really good place to look at. And when the shaft is parallel to the ground on the downswing, that it's ever, is someone opening a soda can right now? That the club relative to your hands looks something like what Charlie has here. It's to the left of where his hands are at. If you're doing all those, you probably have a really nice backswing, downswing to this point. Then after you hit this, that you have your hand path on this side of the ball coming out just below your lead shoulder that way. So trying to start with, how do you move your hands on some kind of an arc without the way most people do it, which is set up too open to the target, too far to the left, and then move your hands too far up and not inward enough, and end up slicing across the ball and peeling those things out over here. Yeah?
Yeah,
What else?
those are very good
That's pretty good.
starting points.
Okay. Let's start with the basics here, Connie. Let's go to the front view, and let's see this one. Ooh, this swing's kind of a disaster, but look, it'd be a good one to talk about here.
Thanks.
This is Connie's swing. So from the front view, putting your hands forward of the middle of your body would be a good start. You can see how Connie's feet are slightly turned out, and that might be a good place to start.
Great place
Okay.
to start.
All right. Top of the swing, draw just another circle around her head as a reference.
I don't think we
Did you
have
open
enough
another
circles
one?
here.
Someone opened, he opened it the rest of the way, okay. So we got a lot of circles here. Now you might notice how her head hasn't really moved around very much. I don't think your head needs to stay in the same place. It's more of the center of your shoulders that doesn't need to move around very much, but hasn't moved very much from the front view. That would be great. Then on the downswing, at least your knee over your ankle or a little further than that. Your lead arm really straight when you hit the ball. Those are simple elements that filming your swing can really help you do. So it's pretty basic stuff. Did you move around? How straight's your arm? Are your feet turned out at a dress?
Yep.
Pretty normal stuff. Keep going a little further, and at this point in time, when your right arm's parallel to the ground, both of your arms as straight as you can get, and you might notice Connie's eyes are just looking right where she would have hit that ball. So not the head
not
down
keeping your head down.
cliche
Yeah,
nonsense that we hear.
yeah, a lot of that.
More questions, or should Connie read that close? I can't even see.
Close it out.
All right, so just want to make sure you guys submit your swing for our next live session. And you can do it in 3 very simple steps.
What are those steps?
All right, you can use our GOLFTEC app. So
First, it
please
looks like a
download our-
4-year-old wrote this. That's not a G. Looks like a J.
I don't know what that is.
I don't either.
But then you can capture a swing with
see it now?
our swing record feature in the app, and then submit it to YouTube at golftech.com. And please mention the problems that you're having so that we can actually help you fix those. And yeah, that's a wrap. We'll see you guys next time.
See you next time. We'll write bigger. We'll have more fun. Thanks for watching.